Hello, gentlemen. My name is Paul Robson. I'm the founder of Manifesto, and this is going to be a video about the roles of men and the roles of women, particularly in a family. And it's especially going to be directed towards young men who might be thinking about family, might not be thinking about family. But I think that in the times that are coming, the men who are finding stable ground are increasingly going to have to make up their minds about what they're doing about family. So I hope that this video can be valuable for them. And probably I'm going to say some stuff which is going to piss some people off. And maybe people are going to call me an evil patriarch or old-fashioned or whatever it is. And I really don't care about that, actually, because some of the things here need to be said and are not said nearly enough. A lot of people are actually saying the opposite in our culture, which is not helping the situation at all. And so the first thing where all of this starts really is just a biological fact. And that fact is that every single person in the world is the product of a mother and a father. We cannot be born, we cannot come into existence without a biological mother and a biological father. Two people, a man and a woman, coming together and having sex. You can also do it through all kinds of other, artificial methods, of course. But there has to be a mother and a father who provide the DNA, the genes for a child to then be born. And that this is now the starting point for a family. And all studies and any kind of person who's ever looked at this will also agree that the best person to raise a child in the first, in the formative years of their life, but, continuing for quite a long time, is the biological mother and the biological father. No one else can do this nearly as well as these two people can do in almost all cases. We have like people who are absolutely off the rails and drug addicts and whatever, where sometimes there can be need for other people, but almost all the time, there's biological mother and father are the best people to be doing this work. So the core video of this work is how to get that to work as a biological mother and a biological father for a child, and what is it that are the things that can make that work well. And the absolutely necessity for understanding at the bottom of this relationship is the fact that men and women are different. There are different roles for men and women. Men will typically have a more masculine role in the family and should typically have a more masculine role in the family. And a female, the mother, would typically have a more feminine role in the family. And this is a beautiful and good thing. So what does that mean? Well, the masculine is that which needs to be that which provides for and protects and in some way leads or presides over the leadership of the family, often, and especially in its spiritual development, but also in its material and physical and all other psychological development as well. This needs to be the father that takes the primary role in doing this. The woman is the one who would take care of the provision and the nourishment of life within the family. So while the father's role is more towards the outside, the mother's role is more on the inside. So there are many cases where men do not take this leadership role. And in that case, then often the woman will have to take it. She might even be better at taking it in the beginning than what the man is. But this is not an optimal outcome. So if you're a man and your partner is more masculine than you are, then there's a good chance that she's going to burn out in the long term, that there's going to be frustrations, they're going to grow, and that things are going to go wrong. So I thought in illustrating this, I want to tell a little story of kind of like how we're getting confused about this in our culture. Because just this weekend, I was sitting together with a group of people, we were having coffee, and a young guy who I haven't met before. He was sitting there, and I was talking about a special type of Romanian dish called coliva. And I said to my wife, who was sitting next to me, I said, "Oh, it would be great if you could learn how to make this coliva, because that, I really enjoy it, and I think it'd be great if you could make it." And so this young man who was sitting on my other side, he then says to me, "Oh no, he disagrees that I'm telling my wife that she should learn how to make coliva. And if I would like to have coliva, then I should make it myself. I should learn how to do it myself. And that would be a much better way of doing it." So I was like, okay, what? Like, where does this come from? Like, why are you telling me like how to do things with my wife? And so he says, well, and so it came out very clearly that this guy had this idea that, traditional gender roles of especially the woman having a primary responsibility for making food was a bad thing, and that we as men should be taking on 50% of food making responsibilities, or at least something like that, like 80-20 wasn't okay for him, blah, 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 right? So all traditional gender roles are bad, and we should be equal in all things, and equal also means the same. So yeah, we had a good conversation based on this. And, it was very weird having a young man who, was in a total chaos in his own private relationships, actually telling me what I should be doing with my wife and how relationships should be in my family. But I get it where he's coming from, right? There's this societal narrative that he's obviously bought into. But I happened to be also sitting with a couple of very wise women having coffee here as well. We were quite a few people. And so, I didn't really even need to, a lot of these women provided a lot of these explanations. And I think one of the strongest things that came through for me was how many of these women said, that they'd grown up with this narrative and this constant message from society saying that they need to be strong, they need to be independent, they need to have their own career, they should not be in any way dependent on a man for anything. And that the things that would make them valuable was attaining, kind of like all these outward signs of success, just like a man should do. And many of them, especially the ones who had reached over 35, 40 years old, had come to a realization, actually, no, all of them had come to this realization, but I think it had come most deeply into the slightly older woman, that what really made them happy in their life was a family, being able to have, be holding a family, be nourishing and cherishing and creating life inside a family. And a lot of that is through providing food for a family, but just providing the frame for a family to grow and be nourished and stuff like that. And this is something that we see. I know plenty of women who are living who've been like in the top of corporate life, high-powered lawyers and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of them will be outperforming the men in their early careers, especially in a society today where we really boost the woman, and a woman, we have all these kind of positive discrimination opportunities and systems in big companies and stuff like that, right? And what we see is that very often these women, they have a couple of children and they suddenly realize, like, wow, like it's just so much more nourishing and valuable for me to spend time with my children. So they decide to drop the career and go down in time, or even completely stop their career and just dedicate that to their family. This is just not a story that gets told very often, though. Instead we get told, that like Denmark, there's this massive debate right now about having quotas of women in the boards of big companies and CEOs and stuff like that. And until we have 50% of women in all these leadership positions, then that's like absolute proof that we're living in this kind of oppressive patriarchy. And so what they're trying to do really is to force society, and thereby force women into these positions, through, soft force or culture, whatever it is. But it's very clear, like, women don't want these positions. They're not nearly as motivated to make the kinds of sacrifices, basically sacrificing your entire life to get to the very, very top of business. You need to become incredibly tough and powerful and very, very, I'm not interested in having I want to have a life with my family as well, right? So it's just like women aren't unbalanced enough, as there are many men that are willing to sacrifice their entire life to reach to these kinds of top CEO positions, whatever it is, right? So then the response that then often comes is something along the lines of, well, then we need to change society and we need to change businesses in order to reflect more feminine virtues and feminine values. And so that then women will be able to reach the top of these positions. And I'm not sure if women will then reach the top of these positions, but yes, I absolutely agree. Like, yeah, we do need to change our society to this like constant chasing of masculine material growth and this kind of thing. But I think the way there is not by saying to women like, oh, you have to be just like a man in order to have value. But recognizing that there are these two halves of life, and there is a masculine kind of like verticality and an ambition and a driving towards progress, and at the same time there's this feminine kind of holding and nourishing and cherishing life, and both of those are equally valuable. And I think the absolutely start of cherishing these kinds of nurturing values is by nourishing, understanding, and valuing motherhood, which I think is the cardinal virtue of the feminine in some ways. It's that which gives life and provides life and brings life, well into the world. So there are plenty of women out there who, are in touch with this desire to become a mother, but they actually face a lot of opposition and a lot of kind of criticism a lot of the time. And certainly my wife, when she made the decision that she didn't want to have a career of her own, but wanted to stay at home and nourish our family and look after our children, then she was met with a lot of people who were very skeptical about that and had to spend a bit of time explaining it. And so, as men, I think we have an opportunity or a work to do as well, is to find that part of women who do understand the value of motherhood and being able to cherish that and appreciate that as well. So we have young men today are rather often confused and lonely, and they have very little understanding of what would make a good wife. And I think that's part of what I wanted to aim at this video with, is helping men to understand what to look for in a woman, because most guys are raised by YouTube and screens all over the place these days. They probably spend, this is part of the consequence of sending off women to work all the time, is that, we've given it over to the state and to the algorithms of the IT giants of social media and whatever it is to be raising our children. And so kids will probably spend more time looking at, social media screens than actually being in contact with their parents today in the first, 18 years of their life. That would be, I think that's pretty much standard. That's where we're at. And so us as older men who have come to a good place in understanding and creating a good family of our own, like we need to say this to younger men. And what it is that, like when you're looking for a woman, then a core thing that you want to look for is a woman who understands the value of being a mother. Because what you want, if you want to be a man who gets ahead in life, who can provide for others, who can be able to, protect others as well, then you need a woman with you who can help you with that and support you with that and be a partner with you in that. And the male role again is to be, creating that upward power and that upward movement, and the female role is the provision and the nourishment of that life underneath as well. So I think, as our society is moving right now into a new time, Ukraine was just invaded by Russia a week ago, and there's gonna be an awakening up of the need for masculine men. And suddenly we're gonna see that, the state has been taking care of a lot of the role of men recently. All of a sudden, we're going to see, well, can we really trust the state? And the states are pushing us towards war at the moment, right? Like that is, it's almost like people are itching to jump into a war with a nuclear armed Russia at the moment. And just this conflict that's arising, we thought that we're living in a very safe society and the state's going to protect us and NATO will protect us. But it seems like, the ambitious expansion of NATO has brought us to a situation actually where we're risking war right on our doorstep and possibly even expanding from here. And so the need for men who can really take leadership of their families. And to do that, they're going to need women who are willing to take the motherly role in their families as well. I think this is going to be something that we're going to notice. And I think, there are plenty of boy men out there who kind of, are suffering from this Peter Pan syndrome, and, like women are these playthings that we can just have fun with and enjoy ourselves with and stuff like that. That's what we've seen in this kind of like protected big nanny state where we've been looked after by the state largely. I think that a lot of guys are going to start waking up now and realizing, it's actually very dissatisfying being this boy. And there's a need for men out there, and men are first of all formed through taking responsibility. and taking responsibility for others. And that place that starts is in the family, because it's the most fundamental basic unit, and we need to make sure that it's not just these isolated little nuclear families. I can talk a lot about that, but it's an expanded family that we're connected to. We're embedded in multiple layers of community as well. So it's not just like, the state and the individual as we have this situation today. So I hope this has been an interesting talk, and looking forward to hear comments and reflections.